Hey guys, Jeff Lewis from Lewis Physical Therapy and Sports Rehab in Point Pleasant here today. I want to go over with you guys the difference between rotator cuff fatigue versus rotator cuff pain, which is more indicative of some type of injury to the muscle. Because it's one thing that I see not as much in older pitchers. We will see it during there's like spring training buildup at times, especially that rotator cuff fatigue. But I see it a lot in the younger guys, the high school youth throwers. So, what is your rotator cuff? Your rotator cuff is a series of four muscles, three that come along the back, one that comes along the front of your shoulder blade here that attaches towards the front of the shoulder. And its main job is keeping your shoulder, which again, if you think of your shoulder as that golf ball sitting on a tee, it's a larger golf ball sitting on that tee. So there's not a whole lot of congruency in that joint there. So the job of that rotator cuff is keeping that golf ball centered in that tee, not only with your arm at your side, but out to the side, up overhead, and especially during the violent throwing motion. So the biggest part of it outside of stability is slowing down the arm. So when we say, hey, we want to make sure we're training the brakes of the arm, that is what's commonly being referred to what we're commonly referring to is the rotator cuff. So mainly during, not necessarily in layback here acceleration, but in that follow-through phase where their arm is fully coming through and their arm is now decelerating in front of them, the job of that rotator cuff is to really just to slow down that arm, to keep it centered without it literally being, it doesn't happen, but like literally as in we're trying to avoid it from being pulled out of the socket. Again, that doesn't happen. It's more just a figure of speech more than anything. So that's the main job of the rotator cuff for the thrower. So as you can see, it has a lot that it has to do. It has to keep that shoulder stabilized during the extreme motions of getting into layback and accelerating out of it, and then for decelerating that arm. So it's very heavily involved in the throwing motion. That's why it's not uncommon for guys to have some type of injury or just something going on with their rotator cuff. So I want to talk first about rotator cuff fatigue. And generally that is guys will say, hey, I just feel like my arm is just hanging. It's just a dead arm more than anything. And that's typically in guys that, at the high school or youth level, they've had their off-season workouts that went good, and then they get right back into their school training, and they're now playing catch every day of the week. They're practicing. They're playing 4 games a week, so their volume just goes through the roof, and their shoulder just gets tired if they don't have proper strength, stability, or endurance in that arm. So a lot of times guys will just feel like they have just that dead arm more than anything. They might even get a little bit of just this aching along the side of their shoulder. They might have some trigger points in the back there where you press on that muscle and they either feel it right around the side. Some guys will feel it down to maybe the thumb back in the hand a little bit, or they just might be super tight just right there in that spot. So those are common signs of rotator cuff fatigue, but for the most part, their strength is, they might be a little weak because they're tired, but their strength is not, they can hold strength positions when you push out, they can hold that position, and maybe it's getting a little tired more than anything, but it's not super painful or sharp stabbing pain or anything like that. So they can withstand strength testing. They have full range of motion. Those are the things that we want to look for. Okay, if they have those two things where, hey, they might be a little bit weak, but they can still hold against some strength testing. They have full range of motion. That is good. That's likely meaning, hey, this is more probably a fatigue thing, and they probably just need to drop their workload a little bit. Maybe give them a couple of days, let things recover. Take the time to figure out, hey, what's lacking in their prep or their arm care routine that is not letting them be able to withstand the force of just their catch play or their outing or anything like that. Now, the injury side of rotator cuff. So this is more of those rotator cuff strains. Some guys might feel it on one pitch, one really hard pitch coming, whether it's fastball, slider, it could be whatever. It could be whatever, but one hard pitch where mainly during that follow through, that's when they notice it, where they feel like they can't get on, or they can't get on the ball as much. It's really at the follow through they have pain. They might have a little bit getting into layback just because you have to actively use that rotator cuff to get back there, but it's probably going to be more so in the follow through more than anything. And typically after that, you'll start to see guys you go to test them and it's immediate pain. They can't even hold. You go to test them and that arm just falls right in. Their range of motion too, they're just either, if they do have full range of motion, it is not going to feel particularly great. Some guys might be just like, hey, this is all I get right here. And again, if you have someone starting to come to you with those signs or symptoms, or something that you're feeling yourself, that makes me think, hey, this is probably more towards the rotator cuff strain side, injury side, versus fatigue, and that's likely going to warrant some type of further evaluation, a longer period of shutdown, because you got to let that tissue heal more than anything because of how heavily involved it is with throwing. It's going to have a longer period of shutdown, longer rehab process. It's going to take a longer time to work on getting back to play versus for rotator cuff fatigue, it might be a week or two. You might just be, hey, we got to just let things calm down a little bit, get some rehab work in, and then go from there. But that's really the difference that I want you guys to take away from this in determining, hey, if you have some pain on the side or back of your shoulder, pain, soreness, anything like that, these are things you want to look out for of, hey, is this more fatigue or is this more of an injury? So if you're a baseball player or pitcher and you're dealing with some shoulder pain, think it's a rotator cuff, you're not sure if it's a rotator cuff, go ahead and comment below with any questions you have. If you find this content helpful, like and subscribe to our page, or check out some of our free resources below dedicated specifically to baseball players and pitchers.